Hello and welcome back to the Project Management Historian. I didn't say anything different to usual, it's always been Project Management Historian. So a little while ago we looked at a royal wedding and I thought now might be a good time to look at a coronation, specifically the coronation of Queen Victoria. It happened about a year after Victoria succeeded to the throne when she was 18 years old, on the 28th of June 1838, a long time ago. Now describing this coronation as a perfect ceremony would be a huge overstatement. So let's have a look at what was going on through the eyes of a project manager, a Prince 2 project manager specifically. And we could see if it could have potentially been made perfect using the Prince 2 principles. Continued business justification. So what would be our continued business justification? In this case, there's a very simple justification, that being that without a coronation, there could potentially be anarchy and chaos. It's essentially a constitutional need rather than a business justification. But there were people even in Victoria's days that held the view that a coronation was no longer fit for a time of reforms. After all, the ceremony itself had its origins in the Middle Ages, which even they would say was a long time ago. It's even longer for me and you. All in this together. Plus Victoria's uncles who'd ruled before her weren't the most popular people. So really it was a good PR exercise to show that Victoria was a young woman who was potentially going to breathe fresh life into the monarchy. So all in all, a very strong and relatable continued business justification for this little project. By that I mean the coronation of the Queen. Learn from experience. Now obviously this wasn't the first coronation in British history, there'd been a fair few before that, I think at least 2. So there were loads of opportunities to learn from experience. One example for this would be the coronation budget. As they had so much experience, they should really understand what this kind of event or project is going to cost. Victoria's coronation cost £70,000, which I think is almost exactly what William and Kate's wedding cost. I think they did it on the cheap. In reality, this budget was chosen very carefully. By comparison, William IV's coronation had only cost £30,000, but the response to that coronation wasn't a particularly positive one. People called it a cut price event and weren't happy about the lower budget. But poor William, and I do have difficulty saying poor anybody who is king of something, poor William simply didn't like all the ceremonial fluff that came with a coronation and only reluctantly agreed to have one at all. With George IV, on the other hand, who was crowned in 1821, it was the complete opposite scenario. He was known for his flamboyant style and unsurprisingly, his coronation was the most expensive ever, which was £240,000. Just a lot of cheddar, even in those days. A lot of money, a lot of cheese. This £240,000 was spent on over-the-top, lavish luxuries. And £240,000 in those days was roughly equivalent to £22 million in these days. So this time, that being Victoria's coronation, they tried to find a middle ground, and they succeeded. Defined roles and responsibilities. Now, to pull off an impressive coronation, or an impressive project of any kind really, you need to make sure that you're defining roles and responsibilities for everyone involved. Everybody needs to know who will look after what. The executive in this case would probably be considered to be the Prime Minister, Lord Melbourne, as he was leading the planning of the coronation. And let's say the Archbishop of Canterbury is a team manager, as he led the service in Westminster. And there are a few other bishops which would be considered to be his team involved in the proceedings. Unfortunately, he could have done a bit of a better job of ensuring the quality of the work that his team were producing. The Archbishop himself put the coronation ring on Victoria. Unfortunately, he put it on the wrong finger. It was actually sized for her pinky finger, or your little finger. And this resulted in, and I'm quoting Queen Victoria here, the greatest difficulty in taking it off again, which I at last succeeded in doing, but not without great pain. Now, great pain probably wasn't in her plan for that day. It's not a wedding. I thought it was funny. Part of the Archbishop's team were the Bishops of Durham and the Bishop of Bath and Wells. And, well, there was definitely some room for improvement. According to Victoria, the Bishop of Durham never could tell what was to take place. And when he was meant to hand her the orb, I'm not entirely sure what the orb is, but I think the orb is an important part of a coronation. When he was supposed to hand her the orb, he was puzzled and confused, as I would be. The occasion has never come up where I've needed to hand somebody an orb, but I hope one day it will. The Bishop of Bath and Wells, on the other hand, turned over too many pages of the order of service at once, and thus missed an important part. You've got to read every page. He actually had to call the Queen back because of that. Imagine having to call back the Queen. Ridiculous. A coronation is managed by stages because you can't do everything at once, obviously. It would be ridiculous. Madness. We could say that the first stage was the procession, which began at 10 a.m, where Victoria made her way from Buckingham Palace to Westminster Abbey. Her gold state coach made an almost circular route from the palace, past Hyde Park Corner, along Piccadilly, down St James's Street to Pall Mall, Charing Cross and Whitehall, and finally arriving at Westminster Abbey. It took a whole hour, but it ensured that Victoria was seen by the large crowd. Then the coronation service started, which lasted 5 hours. 5 hours is a long time for any kind of service or ceremony. It's longer than the Oscars. And they give out loads of awards, not just one. As part of this service, Victoria was obviously presented to the people. She then swore an oath to uphold the law and the church. One in each hand. After that, she was anointed with holy oil, invested with regalia, the orb, the sovereign sceptres, and the ring. And finally, her crown was placed upon her head. And in her own words, she said, "And then followed all the various things, and last of those things, the crown being placed upon my head." After that, the subjects, her peers, paid her homage. Fromage. And this is the stage at which an accident happened. The 88-year-old Lord John Roll took a trip and rolled down the stairs towards the throne. Pun intended. But don't worry, I can make that pun because he wasn't hurt. Managed by exception. And now, as I always say about this principle, this is all about defined tolerances. Let's start by looking at the quality tolerance. Because in theory, there was no real room for a quality tolerance during the ceremony. But there were surely quality tolerances around the well-being of the visitors. And with a 5-hour ceremony, the organisers didn't really care too much about the normal people. Harsh. Writer Harriet Martineau, for example, brought her own book and sandwich and ate it whilst leaning against a pillar. A friendly pillar, as she described it herself. Don't know how a pillar is unfriendly. And other exhausted visitors who had been there since 7 a.m. just ended up lying on the floor wherever they were, no matter how dirty or dusty that floor may be. So not so nice, really, for the normal folk. But in a way, there was some scope tolerance. The mandatory requirement here was Victoria's coronation itself and the procession. In addition, you also had the fair, which was a nice to have for the public. So a fair is nice to have. It's nice to have a fair. And even with this one, the original plan was that it would only last 2 days, but due to the popularity, they kept it open for 4 days. Bonus fair. Because ultimately, who doesn't want happy subjects at a coronation? I want lots of happy subjects at mine. Focus on products. So this is all about quality requirements, and this is the one where they really missed the target. A huge problem was that hardly any rehearsal had taken place. Wonder what that's like. Lord Melbourne even had to persuade Victoria to visit the Abbey the night before so that she would know where to move and when. But there are historians that believe that she didn't have any idea where she was supposed to be. And if you've ever been to Westminster Abbey, you'll know that it's pretty big and quite easy to feel disoriented in there, which I imagine she was. It was a big day. She had a lot on her mind. And the 8 ladies who acted as train bearers hadn't practiced at all and ended up treading on each other's trains. It's a dress train, not an actual train. Although that would be more exciting. And as I already mentioned, some of the bishops just didn't know what was happening during the ceremony. And the young Benjamin Disraeli, who was attending the ceremony as a member of parliament, said that those involved were always in doubt as to what came next, and you saw the want of rehearsal. And the ceremony itself overran. Even though it was 5 hours long, it still managed to overrun. It's even longer than 5 hours. And when the Lord Treasurer handed out commemorative medals, he was nearly ripped to pieces by people who were very keen on getting a commemorative medal. Many of those present essentially described the coronation as chaotic and unrehearsed. But Victoria came out the other side of the event as a crowned queen, and both the press and the public seemed to consider the event a success. So who am I to argue? Tailored to suit the environment. Obviously, with such an ancient tradition, you have to stick to a lot of rules, especially since the main elements of the coronation haven't really been changed for close to 1,000 years. But there was still some room for adaptation. There always is. Well, not always, but most of the time there is. As I already mentioned, Victoria's uncles, William IV and George IV, hadn't really won over the hearts of their subjects. So to combat that happening again with Victoria, they launched a charm offensive, which is the best kind of offensive. The plan was to adapt the traditional coronation style and introduce new elements, creating a mix of old and new. Plus, they wanted to invite the public, which wasn't the most popular decision at the time. Even non-peers could buy tickets to get into Westminster Abbey, although they were quite expensive. Now, not everyone was happy with these changes, nor the tailored approach. There were some outcries about the public procession because it meant that the very traditional and very exclusive banquet at Westminster Hall had to be cancelled. Another change was that the ritual was tailored to suit a 19-year-old girl. It definitely wouldn't have been appropriate to anoint Victoria on her breast with holy oil. Chest. No, breast. Script says breast. So instead, they anointed her on her head and hands only. As part of the ritual, the usually male monarch would also wear the Garter of the Order around his leg. But again, there was no way Victoria was going to be showing a bit of leg on her wedding day. So instead, she wore hers decoratively around her arm. As she was very petite, the coronation crown was also deemed to be too heavy for Victoria, so they had a lighter one made. Although she did get a headache from wearing it, so they didn't make it light enough, evidently. Shame. Shame Bell.
Shame.
But all in all, it was a successful application of the Taylor principle. And that brings us to the end of our discussion about Queen Victoria's coronation. And as Queen Victoria remained on the throne for 63 years, they had a fair amount of time to plan the following coronation and to not make such a mess of it. If you enjoyed this video and you like this kind of content, maybe subscribe to the Axos YouTube channel, because there will be more. I'll see you next time.